All right, so welcome to the Fiscal Philosophy YouTube channel. We're covering Hershey today, mostly because my X feed is loaded with people saying that they're buying the dip on this company. So there must be something that's attractive about it. If people are buying the dip, they're obviously expecting something to change for the better, or they're expecting it to go back up or get some kind of a return on this. So we're going to look at it and figure out if that's the case and what, if anything, people see in this company at the moment. The current PE is about a 17 forward, about 19. So that would mean analysts expect earnings to drop. I did hear cocoa prices were high and that was hurting them. Price to free cash flow was also in that same 18 range, by the way. We'll come back around to valuation a little later. Hershey owns, of course, many different brands. I know they own like Dots Pretzels and Pirates Booty in their salty snack division, in their confectionaries. They've got, of course, their namesake Hershey bar. They've got Reese's, Twizzlers, a bunch of stuff like that. Hershey's Kisses. So everybody knows and has probably consumed a Hershey's product at some point in time. And they are considered a consumer staple, which is generally considered a defensive thing to buy during, say, downturns in the market. It's less volatile than a lot of other stocks. As you can see, it's got a beta of only 0.37. So people generally get into stocks like this in order to feel safe. However, just because you feel safe doesn't mean that you actually are. And we'll get into it in just a moment here. Okay, so not much for the last couple days in the news feed, although there were some new appointments. I guess there's like a CEO succession plan, and they've got new presidents of confection and salty. I don't think that alone would be a reason why the stock would be down this much over this period of time. 4 days ago, someone on Seeking Alpha seems to think the market's being too bearish on the company, and another Seeking Alpha person says that they would I guess it would be one of the companies they'd buy to live on dividends. So not too much that's really incredibly interested or world shattering to me in the news feed. I'm going to look at the financials here a little bit and see if I can find any gems. So the revenue for Hershey is maybe slightly in an uptrend over the last few years. I would expect this to be a rather slow grower, if at all, somewhat stagnant. And as you can see, it's not necessarily straight up and to the right. There's a lot of peaks and valleys here. I would assume that the only way they really grow is either through price hikes and or new product lines, acquiring brands that are taking off and becoming popular, or coming out with new product lines on their own that they've come up with in their test kitchens or whatever. So not probably a lot of just secular growth in the core business. Like you're not going to find many corners of the world where there are stones to turn over for new customers for like a Hershey bar, right? They're pretty well saturated, I think, in a lot of markets. And so I would expect growth to be rather unimpressive, to say the least. EPS is kind of a similar thing. It's not as though this is just going purely up and to the right. There are definitely a lot of pullbacks that happen with these numbers. Maybe slight growth over time, but again, growth-wise, I don't really think you're going to get a lot out of something like the Hershey company. I just don't see them as an innovator or a disruptor. If anything, they're the target of disruption from new upstart brands. Although anything that starts to take market share in their space, them or one of their real competitors could just probably buy them out for a few $1,000,000 and move on with life. The balance sheet isn't a thing of beauty, but it's not as ugly as it seems at a glance. 5 billion net debt. And I looked at their interest expense, and only about 10-ish% of their trailing 12-month net income was eaten up by interest on this debt. So it's probably largely low-ish interest debt, which makes sense for an established name like Hershey. So I'm not like I wouldn't call their debt situation necessarily a crisis, though it I don't love it. It is like a little bit of a drag on the company, but if they needed cash and took a lot of this out when cash was cheap, I can't necessarily fault them for doing it. Now, this is interesting. I don't often see an analyst consensus sell on a lot of the stocks that I see getting pushed on social media. Now, it's weird that they have that when the price is hovering right around the low 12-month forecast. Now, this could be just because this is a data feed, so analysts probably have not yet adjusted their price targets to the latest big drop in share price. So that's just a timing thing, I think. But it's actually kind of, I think it does show like some bearish sentiment, again, that those Seeking Alpha articles were sort of talking about earlier. And some of it does probably have to do with high cocoa prices. I have heard people think that the GLP-1 inhibitors are going to crush companies like Hershey, Mondelez, Pepsi, Coke, McDonald's, and what have you. Anybody that basically has a business that is heavily involved in selling basically highly addictive and not exactly the healthiest types of foods. People think that those are just going to get crushed by a few fatties taking Ozempic. I don't know if that's necessarily the bear case that everybody thinks it is, but it's definitely one. It's just another little piece in this puzzle where right now you've got a lot of negative things converging. You have if you throw that in there with the high cocoa prices and with maybe earnings not looking as good and maybe yields, the 10-year treasuries being a bit higher in recent days. Granted, I heard today there was a little pullback in that, but 10-year treasuries have been sort of trending up for a hot minute. It sort of begs the question of what are you getting from Hershey where it's looking attractive? Because if you can get a safe yield from 10-year treasuries that's comparable and you're not expecting a lot of growth, like where's the value proposition? Like, look here. So we've got a 3.6% dividend yield, a slightly less than 1% buyback yield, 4.37% shareholder yield. I think the 10-year treasury was slightly above this total yield not long ago. Now, granted, you do have dividend growth, 22.98%. But at a 63% payout ratio, how many more times with like almost no growth can they raise the dividend at an amount even close to that? Not too terribly many, which again means you might end up with like uh, a 5% yield on cost in a couple years or something like that if you buy today. Okay, is that enough better than the 10-year treasury yield to be worth taking a risk that something bad doesn't happen to Hershey? Like maybe the cocoa prices stay higher longer. Maybe the GLP-1s really do put a dent in their sales. Who knows? I think that's probably why the market is bearish on Hershey at the moment. It's just all these things, and it just seeming like there isn't enough juice here to be worth the squeeze. And speaking in terms of total valuation, you have a price to earnings of about 17 with a forward PE of about 18, with the forward PE and the price of free cash flow being pretty similar right now. So that's where the dividend and the buyback are going to come from. So, okay, that we already discussed. You might get 4.5-5% yield on cost. That might go up a little bit if they can eke out some more dividend increases. But okay, you could lock in close to that in a 10-year treasury and not have again the downside risk of the things that are currently going against Hershey out there in the world. So if you buy Hershey today for that, what's your incentive? Is it growth? Well, no, I think we pretty well debunked the idea that Hershey is much of a grower in their business. So, what is it? The incentive is what? That the multiple expands back from the high teens into like the mid to high 20s. It's going to be a 26 PE again. And, earnings are either going to stay the same or maybe go up a little bit. That's that to me, I think, is the entire bull case on this. Unless somebody has something that I'm missing on this, because this is one of the first times I've really taken a look at the stock to try to see if there's any there in regards to it. So let me know if I'm missing something big on this. As usual, if you made it to the end, I'd like to thank you and also ask that you like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider joining my Discord, follow me on X, catch me Saturday at PM Eastern Cashflow Kings Live. We do all kinds of shows with all kinds of guests, a lot of your favorite finfluencers and other people from around the internet will be on the show in the next few weeks. So definitely looking forward to that. Make sure also that you throw some comments below if you have anything else to add about Hershey. Take it easy, everyone.